Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. The first time I heard Antwaun Stanley sing was also the first time I saw him sing. It was in a Wolfpack video, maybe one of the first Wolfpack videos I ever saw, back before they were a phenomenon, before they broke Spotify, redefined what a band even is, changed the way videos look, upended what a mix should sound like, launched or resurrected the careers of pretty much everyone they came into contact with, or shattered their own expectations by selling out Madison Square Garden without even having a label or a manager. Before any of that, they were a bunch of mostly grungy-looking nebbishes in training, standing in a nondescript-looking apartment playing a down-and-dirty groove with an almost impossibly goofy lyric. And the singer? Who was that singer? Where would you even come into contact with a singer like that? Where do you find that guy? That singer was Antwaun Stanley.
It's a sense, what you need to set it. Sometimes I write a little song so you don't forget it. Sometimes I write a little song to remember the lyrics. I go sing.
The song, 1612, is one that he's still associated with. Maybe his biggest hit with Wolfpack, if there is such a thing as a Wolfpack hit, and I think there is. And part of what made it so extraordinary was that there seemed to be a knowing acknowledgement within the conceit of it, that a truly great singer can make anything feel meaningful.
Frank Sinatra.
Antwaun Stanley is not only a truly great singer, but one who was raised singing in the church, delivering sermonic songs to introduce the preacher. From the time he was 5 years old, he was accustomed to making his music mean something, even when the words didn't necessarily make sense to him. By the time he entered the University of Michigan in the late aughts, Antwaun had already been signed as a contemporary gospel artist, had made the rounds on TV shows and singing contests, had a series of managers and handlers and producers that recognized in him the immense electricity in his singing and his stage persona. But meanwhile, he was just a kid from Flint, Michigan, being raised by a single mother and trying to walk the straight and narrow path. That dual identity was part of his journey, almost from the very beginning, like a superhero. On Sunday mornings, he was a star, but by the next day, he was back to being a regular student. And when he got to college, he tried his best to blend in, joining an a cappella group and singing with student bands, while at the same time trying to manage his career as a budding gospel star. Even today, he lives with that same duality. While his fame, thanks to Wolfpack and collaborations with Scary Pockets and Corey Wong, have elevated his status, he still chooses to stay close to home, splitting his time between Flint and Ann Arbor. Talking to Antwaun, I got the sense that he spent his whole life from the time he was 3 years old and spontaneously started singing spirituals in his mother's kitchen, figuring out what to do about his talent, negotiating between who he needs to be and who the world wants him to be. Finding that middle space where he can explore his gifts, but also deliver for the people in his life. I've had the chance to talk to so many members of the inner circle of the funk phenomenon that is Wolfpack. It wasn't my intention originally, but it just sort of unfolded that way. And all of them have described Antwaun Stanley as hands down the most inspiring singer they've met. One of the key players in the Wolf experience who I have not yet had the chance to talk to is Tyler Duncan, the great producer and multi-instrumentalist who also chose to stay in Ann Arbor and make his career happen from the upper Midwest like a boss. But even though I haven't talked to Tyler, I get the feeling that he also was inspired by Antwaun Stanley's singing. And the two of them recently released a project called Ascension, a high-class dance pop project that gave each a chance to stretch out and do what they do best. The record is both beautiful and unexpected in just how polished it is, but in an entirely musical, fulfilling, and funky way.
A rocket in a crowded room, looking to light the fuse. A 33 or 45, watching the waxing night. So hold on, dim the lights and let them bring off. Buckle up, we're set for takeoff. One-way ticket on a non-stop flight. At the speed of light, get up, follow the flash.
Antwaun and I spoke recently about walking the line between spiritual and secular music, managing the responsibility to his fans and his own desire to explore, how he sees his career as one giant experiment and a constant process of discovery, and of course, his experience at Wolfpack. Third-story.com is the place to go. Sign up, subscribe, get involved, check out the archive, including past episodes with Antwaun's friends Jack Stratton, Theo Katzman, Joey Dosick, Joe Dart, Woody Goss, Corey Wong, and many more. As usual, I have curated a Spotify playlist related to our conversation today, as well as some YouTube videos of Antwaun, and that's all available at the website third-story.com, or head over to patreon.com/thirdstorypodcast to help support the project on a deeper level. You know what I mean. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Here's me and Antwaun Stanley talking it down. Antwaun Stanley, I'm so happy to be here with you. As you know, I've been waiting to talk to you for a minute.
Yeah, it has. It's been a minute, and I'm glad that we've finally been able to do this. I feel like I've been doing quite a few other things and just waiting for a good moment for us to get together. And so I'm so glad that that you've been you've been patient, and you've been like, oh man, it's at any point it'd be great to connect and just talk a little bit more about your just background and
who you are, man. The thing is, Antwaun, that among a certain group of people who are into the music that you make and the videos that you've been a part of and the scenes that you cross over into, you're like already kind of legendary, and at the same time, you're still very mysterious. There's not a lot that we know. I mean,
I guess so. When I think about a lot of the things that I've done and a lot of folks that I've been around, it's like, you get into certain circles and you may have heard of who I am and you may have seen who I am, but there's still not much you know.
I think one of the things about you is that you belong to this group of people, especially with the University of Michigan and Michigan scene that emerged out of Ann Arbor 10, 15 years ago. But the thing I am struck by with you is that you actually have really deep ties in Michigan. Some of those folks came to Michigan to college or whatever, but you're from Flint, Michigan. Did you grow up in Flint, Michigan?
Born and raised in Flint, Michigan.
Tell me about it.
Born and raised in Flint, Michigan to a single mother. And my brother and me. And, she's the foundation, and Flint is the foundation for me. And that's where it all started. That's where I started being musical at home. My mom, she was preparing dinner one day, and I was 3 years old, and she started singing Amazing Grace, and she was just kind of humming it casually. And here I am at this little kid's table. So she went to sing, and then she paused, and I kind of broke out with my own rendition of Amazing Grace. And from there, she went crazy. She started calling, family members and friends on the phone. She had to go out on the porch, and she was just like, what? My baby can sing. And so, it was a really defining moment for me because I remember bits and pieces of that, actually. It's so crazy.
You remember at 3 years old, you remember...
At 3 years, I remember how it looked in the kitchen, and I'll never forget. It's so crazy how I am able to kind of recall some of those things. I mean, I don't remember every specific thing that happened, but I do remember being at that table and in the kitchen, and I do remember her going outside and being on the phone, and it was just so crazy. And I can just imagine, me at 3 years old, just thinking like, well, what's all the fuss about?
Had you been going to church with her and hearing people sing? Where do you think you developed whatever little basic idea of what singing was at 3 years old?
Oh yeah, I was brought up in the church. The church was very much, like a cornerstone of my, artistic life, I guess.
Yeah.
Surrounded by choirs. At times I would do solo songs, and what they called them sermonic solos. And so what that meant is many times before the minister would get up to preach, I would deliver a song, and they would kind of use that as a setup for how they were going to, come forth with their message. Here's this little guy with this huge responsibility. I mean, that was quite a task. Anytime you go before the preacher, it's kind of a big thing because in a way you're helping to set the tone for the delivery of, his or her message. So I learned about being in front of an audience and just a beginner's level of what performing is. My first ever gig was when I was 3, actually. And it was at my great-grandmother's birthday party.
So your mother hears you sing, you're 3 years old, she gets on the phone. It's almost like she doesn't know exactly what to do, but she knows she needs to do something. So she picks up the phone and she starts calling people to let them know you can sing. And shortly after that, you're playing at your great-grandmother's birthday party. And shortly after that, you're up in church in front of the congregation singing.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't until a little later.
Yeah.
But I had gotten, calls. People in the community would hear, me singing and start inviting me to their events. Word was, starting to spread in the community about this little guy who was a good singer and kind of an entertainer too. But I made my public singing debut at my great-grandmother's birthday party, and that sort of kicked things off. And before I knew it, the stages started to get bigger. The crowd started to get a little larger, and I began traveling more and more.
And how did you feel about that? How did it feel to you to be kind of thrust into that?
Well, I thought it was really cool. I mean, because at that time, you kind of go based off of how people react to you. So when you're doing something like that, and then people are just like kind of, commending you, they're clapping their hands, they're getting up, they're hugging you, they're baking you cakes and pies, or just giving you gifts because of what you're doing. And then you're seeing them smile. I loved it. I was taking it in because this was something that I enjoyed doing and I loved doing. And my mom, she worked with me and she gave me pointers on singing because, she sang herself. She wasn't like a professional singer, but she sang it when she was in high school, and she'd always have on the radio, and maybe it was gospel station, maybe it was like a soul station or something like that.
So it wasn't only gospel. You were getting it all.
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't just gospel.
Yeah.
I was exposed to like Motown and gospel, a little bit of country, jazz, a lot of different classical music. That was actually a little later that I got really, or just kind of developed an interest in classical music. That was like more in high school. But I was aware of a lot of, many different genres of music.
I only met you briefly in person once at the Madison Square Garden Wolfpack show. I introduced myself as you were walking in. And just talking to you the little bit now, what I think is a little maybe unexpected, although it's not the first time I've seen this, is that your stage persona is so exaggerated and filled with life and energy. And I remember feeling this when I met you the first time, and now also that your kind of personal energy is much more restrained.
Yeah.
I mean, were you surprised by how comfortable you were on stage, or by what came out of you once you got out on stage? Because you seemed kind of mild-mannered in real life.
That's funny that you bring that up, because I don't really give much attention to how different I can be, even off stage. It's just like when I'm on stage, I do in some ways become a slightly different person. I guess in real life, I am pretty mild-mannered compared to the, on-stage persona. I think that's just like something that comes about in the moment. Although, when I'm practicing or rehearsing, and things of that sort, I definitely have those moments when I'm just like thinking about, oh man, this would be really cool, or that would be really cool, right? But once you're in the thick of it and you hit the stage and you have the adrenaline and you see the people and they're responding to you, it's difficult to actually predict what exactly will happen. And but usually when I'm on stage, especially in more recent years when I've been with Wolfpack, the shows are really high energy.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of that helps too when you have songs that people are really, really reacting to, meaning they're singing the lyrics and they're like dancing and, and looking forward to certain moments that they may have recognized from one of the YouTube videos or something like that.
Yeah.
And so when you take all of that in and you step on stage, there is like a part of you that comes alive apart from maybe something that you've rehearsed or practiced. I guess I'm a pretty laid back guy. I'm not like I try not to be too over the top, the top on a daily. That's something that's constantly being developed. I feel like there's a lot about me as an artist that I have still yet to explore.
I totally agree, and I want to talk about what you've been up to lately. But before we do, I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you about. The first one, actually, I just discovered today, is this record that you made maybe before you went to college or around when you were college age, I Can Do Anything, this gospel album that you made, which is a little bit buried. I mean, I'm sure you know this. Like, you have to go looking for it to find it. It's on YouTube if you look for it, but it's not on Spotify. It's not on any of the streaming services.
Yeah.
It, to me, offers a window into who you were kind of in your early adulthood, because it's a really seriously great record, and your performances are unbelievable.
We can be reminded of that miraculous power.
It's a contemporary gospel record. I was in my late teens, I believe, when I started recording that. I think around 17 or so, when I had met the owner of the label, who was also the head of a church in Detroit, and the label was called Bajerde. Not really sure if it is still in existence, today, but I was introduced to the bishop of that church, who was also, like I said, the head of the label. He was, I guess, in search of talent for the label. My name came up. My managers at the time had introduced.
So you had managers already, 17 years old. You were being representative.
Yeah. There's a whole history there too. Yeah, I've been singing obviously for a pretty long time, and there was a moment where my mom had brought on a management team just to kind of help with, help guide my career. And because when I was, coming out of the single digits, things had really kind of picked up, and I had, various opportunities to do things, but all the while I was in school.
And you were going on TV shows and stuff. You were doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had an opportunity to go and do some shows and things of that sort, with like BET. Yeah. And here I was 9 or something, and doing these, competitions, but still have to be at school the next morning, right? So it was it was a bit of a juggle there, but my mom has always been a constant, and she's been a great encourager, not just for my music career, but for education and my spiritual life. She's always been there to help guide me along that. And but anyway, going back, I guess, to the I Can Do Anything project, I was introduced to the label. It was, of course, a gospel label, and so I did a gospel record. And up to that point, I had not released a record. Yeah. So it was a really big moment. It was like a benchmarking point in my life, because at this point I was like, we were like, okay, you can finally work to create and release a full record. They paired me with, some really big gospel producers at that time. We were able to, come up with these songs, and really the process, was them making like submissions for songs, and me, talking to the producers about just sharing a little bit of my story. And, that's kind of how the process went. But like I said, a lot of those songs were created either for me or maybe had existed and was just trying to see, okay, does this mesh with, this young man's story as a young Christian artist?
Whether or not it's in the gospel world or the pop world or whatever, I think being in that position of being 17 years old, 18 years old, where you really don't fully know who you are, and it's a lot riding on you to sort of tell your story and explain who you are maybe before you know who you are. And it's interesting that you say, even as a young Christian, there's this expectation, especially because you can sing, you're talented, you represented so much to so many people. And I can imagine that you felt like there was a lot riding on you to deliver.
I did feel that. There was a lot of things, coming together. You have that bit of weight, and then you are also, like, oh man, is this really what I should be doing in life? And thinking about just career and not really knowing what the future holds, but just kind of living in that moment. It's a lot. It was definitely a lot. And I definitely asked myself a lot of questions and had a lot of talks with my mom, even the managers at that time, and a lot of dialogue happening, but there was just also a lot of doing as well. Eventually got the project done, and the project was released in '06. I was I think a sophomore at the University of Michigan. A lot of my peers were just kind of finding out, like, oh wow, so you do music outside of school. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was also becoming even more musical in school too. I had joined an a cappella group, and then there were other opportunities to kind of be musical between doing things that were related to that project and doing things that were musical in school. It was just like, how do I balance this? And that was just a very interesting time, because I didn't want to, of course, get into any trouble with the fact that, hey, you are a signed artist. You do want to uphold obligations with the company that you are with. But there was also an understanding that I would be able to, complete my degree. And so, it was a balancing act.
Already, I feel that initial commentary about you kind of splitting your identity between the stage identity and the street identity is apt, because what you describe is having to kind of live in two spaces, to, from the time you were 3 years old, be this kind of phenomenon and traveling around, have management, performing, whatever, and then also show up on Monday morning in school and just be the normal kid. Or even when you go to Michigan, where you actually have an opportunity to formally study music and be in a music school or whatever, you're still interacting with kids who basically are kind of just getting into it on a serious level, and you've already made a record and you're already signed. Again, it just speaks to that dichotomy that I just feel from you, is like kind of I've always had to have one foot kind of in two spaces and navigate that.
Yeah, that's really real and relevant to my life. Even in processing it can cause me great wonder. Like, whoa, how did I get here? And how am I not super crazy right now? or maybe and not know it. But if anything, I feel like I'm more grateful. I mean, of course, there's a lot of questions you can ask, but I think there are times when you appreciate the moment and you appreciate life and where you are. But I feel like mentally, I've had to kind of juggle, a bit.
I happened to run into the clarinetist Mark Dover last night, and I mentioned to him I told him I was going to talk to you today, and he told me a really interesting story about seeing you in that a cappella group, and he said everybody was freaked out when they saw Antwaun, because it was like the first time that they saw somebody sing and it sounded like a record, or it sounded like professional, and he was you were a student, you were one of them, but you sounded so pro. And honestly, with everybody I've talked to in the sort of Wolfpack community who saw you in college, they all kind of more or less speak to that same truth, that something about experiencing hearing you at that time in their lives gave them an idea like, okay, I see the bar is here. Like, this is possible. And I think you influenced a whole generation of those musicians and singers just by showing up and being yourself.
Leo, man, I'm honored to be able to talk to you, but I'm even more honored that you would make a statement like that. I've always been just kind of, do for the most part what comes natural, and I've really appreciated, the gift that I've been given. I've definitely done a few things to try to enhance, like go to school, to enhance, the gift, and I'm yet learning even the best ways to try to use it. But I feel like I've always been surrounded by incredible people, namely, just musicians. Even in Flint. I mean, I know that Flint isn't thought of in the best light these days, but there's a lot of talent in Flint. And growing up, I was surrounded by, I feel like, some of the best, from singers to, to players. There was a really good community. And then, of course, being not far from Detroit, I was able to, kind of mingle with others. I'm very, very grateful to have, been surrounded by talented people, even including Mark. I mean, come on. All of the people who are, surrounded in that Wolf community is so incredibly talented. So, being able to meet them really just kind of, I think, helped enhance me as an artist.
It's interesting that you say that they helped enhance you as an artist, because you were coming in at that point essentially as a gospel artist, and that was one way that you could use your gift and your talents, and that was one audience that you could reach.
Right.
When you started to work with other kinds of musicians, when you started to interact with this kind of funk and crazy scene that came out of Ann Arbor, and also, I mean, I don't know, I'm making an assumption here, but also a lot more white musicians and maybe white audiences also.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Did that shift your sense of like what other possibilities there might be for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Even being in Flint, there was always diversity. I had, just experience working, even in the music world with, many different types of faces, and so that's another great thing too. I mean, my high school was very diverse. Of course, obviously predominantly Black, but, there were many other, races and things of that sort. And so I had a salad bowl of just, relationships and friends and stuff. And many, and musicians included. And so going to U of M, it wasn't really that much of a shocker being, I guess, counted as in the minority there. Once I started meeting people and finding out their interest, just as a friend, especially related to music, I was like, oh man, we've got something. We should connect. I had joined an a cappella group.
Was it called Dixon Janes?
Yep, it was Dixon Janes.
Yeah.
I think what was happening, I went, to what they call MacFest, the big conference or festival that they had with all of the a cappella groups on campus, and it was held at the Michigan Union. You have all these aka heads or a cappella folks in this big ballroom, and each one of the groups, there was an abundance of a cappella groups. Oh my gosh, let me tell you. University of Michigan had like 1,000 a cappella groups.
Wow.
And so MacFest, we all came together, and I think each group did like a couple to a few songs. And I was able to hear, and this was like, I think around my freshman year, everybody had gone around and, done their thing. And I ran into my RA, who happened to be in one of the a cappella groups. It was Dixon Janes. And I was like, hey, can you fill me in on what this, what's the process for auditioning? And, just kind of, so he told me about an audition, and, I got a time and everything. I showed up, sang my song. Everybody just seemed to be, wild. And we're just like, okay, you're coming in with us, And so that was pretty much how it started in the a cappella at U of M for me. Yeah, and everything just kind of clicked.
The song is going to be Something's Got a Hold on Me, sung by Mr. Antwaun Stanley.
Song
I was, the I think I was the only black guy really in the group at the time, and it was like, okay, it just is the way that it is. You can't necessarily walk into a space and change the culture or change the look of it, right? But you can just be yourself and hope that things gel. And they did. I mean, when you have friends, you joke and whatever and all of that stuff. But I think there was a respect there, with those guys. And I mean, of course, I wasn't the only like minority or person of color in the groups, so it was, I definitely don't want to make it seem like it was just, one particular way. Mm-hmm. But no, it was really cool to be surrounded by a group that, just, loved to have fun, was respectful and were talented. Mm-hmm. That following year, I found myself on the opposite end. So instead of going to see these groups, I was finally in a group. Mm-hmm. And I did some songs, and that's where I eventually was able to meet folks like Jack Stratton. That kind of relationship just kind of started to bud, and I had, gotten more visible. They became more visible on, the kind of music scene, not just at the school, but in Ann Arbor.
Yeah. Was there any question about moving away from gospel and Christian music and faith-based music and singing secular music?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's always been this like constant tussle between the sacred and secular, right? I mean, some of the best musicians and some of the legends have struggled with that, all the way from Thomas Dorsey to Sam Cooke to Aretha Franklin. I mean, my goodness, you name Al Green, you name the artist, and they've all come up against that argument there. And it was no different from me. Growing up in the church, there's like a certain reverence that you have. And if you have a talent like singing, it's like you are expected to carry on the gift, but carry it on in a way that solely honors God, meaning most of everything you do in terms of, your song, it needs to involve giving praise, giving worship, giving honor to God. It was funny because even growing up, I was able to listen to my grandfather's records, the Temptations and, a lot of other Motown artists. And so I was exposed to that. But in terms of performing it, that was not something that I really did. And so when I did my gospel record, it in a way kind of cemented like, okay, this is a gospel artist.
Yes.
And that's it. That was another thing that kind of weighed heavily on me, just psychologically, right? Yeah. Like, this is what you do. You don't do anything else but this. Even though I had so many influences that did not just include gospel musicians. And so by the time I went to college, it was a bit of a struggle because you are exposed to so much. And by that, I mean, you develop these friendships, and then they, you talk about some of your influences, some of your, the musicians that you love, and you take bits and pieces of what you enjoy and you put it together and somehow make it yours. But for me, being in a business that required almost a certain thing, it's like, oh man, it wasn't so easy to just make a switch.
Did you worry about alienating or losing your sacred audience, the people that had supported you up until that moment? Was there a concern that they would be disappointed with you or turn their back on you?
I guess, yeah, there was some feeling that, oh man, I'd get a side eye, or I'd get, like, what does he think he's doing? What is this guy? And even like, especially like among your peers, your peers, be like, whoa. But some of them would see some of the things that I had done. And every now and then there would be like snippets of videos that, would post, to YouTube. And this is all before anything concerning, with Wolf. But yeah, they would, kind of get word or see different things that I had done. And many of them would be like, wow, that's actually, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting to hear you that way or to see you in that way. And so I have to say that I was a bit reluctant to share a lot of non-gospel related stuff,
Sure.
kind of in some ways would kind of shield it. But I think eventually it became too difficult to do that.
I've been thinking about this. I mean, I came out of a very different scene in a very different tradition, but in the course of these conversations, when this question has come up, one of the things that I have thought about is, okay, so, your gift is a gift from God, right? So the idea is that you need to use that gift to praise God because this is a returning of the gift that was given to you. That's your responsibility. But also, when you walk out on stage at Madison Square Garden with Wolfpack, in a way, it is a form of praise because you are delivering your gift to a very different audience. And if any of them should choose to look into who you are and understand your relationship with God, then you've actually done a kind of an extra job of delivering the message far outside of the space that you would be contained within if you were only doing praise and worship music, if that makes any sense.
Yo, I totally agree.
I got a question. Are you ready to get funky? He's on the scene, he's the funky guy. Oh, he's the first to leave, he's the funky guy. Drinking all the team, funky guy. Since he was born, he's self-aware, he's the funky guy. He gave the first dance talk, he's the funky guy. Can you remember the name? He's the funky guy. Street you over, come on. He's a funky guy. He's a funky guy. He's a funky guy.
It's incredible when I think about Madison Square Garden and just being on that stage and using the gift in that way, which in a way that I never really thought would be, I guess, put on display like that. I don't believe the power of God is limited. Now, this is me speaking as just as a spiritual guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that the power of God is limited to one setting
Mm-hmm.
or one genre. I think that God can use any one of us at any given time to fulfill a greater purpose. And, as a person, as an artist, I'm constantly, striving to be the best version of myself that I can be. And, using whatever gift that God has, given. And for me, it's, the ability to sing. And, in the end, I guess, my hope is that whatever I do, the way that I use it can be used to make the world brighter, make
Mm-hmm.
it better. Just, I don't mean to sound, I don't want to come off as platitudinal,
Mm-hmm.
but the characteristics or attributes of God can be expressed in so many different ways without having to overtly say God or Jesus this, or, and so that's where I think the power of music comes in, because people can connect to a feeling without telling them what they should feel. You can offer a way to express it and hope that they eventually wind up where you hope that they will be. It's a lot. It was a lot, and it still is at some, even now at times. But I think I've gotten way over, I'm more over the hump than it was back in the college days.
Looking at the Madison Square Garden, I think of that as more of just kind of like a metaphor for, how far it's gone. But I mean, the other thing that is, I have to make some mention of it, is that you're up on stage with primarily a stage full of Jews. You're on stage with a bunch of Jewish guys. Funky Jews, but Jews nonetheless.
Hilarious. That is hilarious. Yeah. Who would have thought? And then I'm, and I think even in a song, for example, Joey's tune Grandma, which is a beautiful tune. Oh man, Joey's such a great writer. and just a great artisan person. But I even mentioned the term, Yiddish, like speaking in Yiddish, right? It's just, and even with the seriousness of that tune, there are just these little light moments that just kind of, in my mind, kind of, in some ways, kind of poke fun at just the fact that here I am able to sit and jam with these guys, and I mean, completely different cultures, right?
Till I think of her doing the thing that a young boy can understand, like speaking Yiddish, seeing my grandma walking outside with a right foot first. Seeing my grandma doing things a young boy can't understand. But in this day,
we have this common thing where we're able to come together and make something that people can connect to, which is like so like interesting, right?
Yeah.
But it's something way more powerful than I feel like I would have ever imagined for myself, being connected to something like this. Wolf is much greater than any one person.
So tell me the story. I mean, I've had to, for just really at this point, just because I can't not have you tell me your side of the story. I mean, what did he say to you? How did you connect? How did you start working with Jack? And
oh yeah,
start there.
You think that you will never forget some things that happen, but man, after so many years, things do become kind of a blur. It's just like, whoa, how did Jack and I actually start working together? I do remember that Jack was part of the a cappella scene. I'm trying to remember the name of the a cappella group that he was part of, but it was a Jewish a cappella group. And I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to screw it up. Yeah, and I believe that Jack was at one of the MacFest events, and I believe it was the year that I had started singing in the group, or in Dixon James. And so he heard me sing there and was like, whoa, it'd be cool to connect with this guy. And so I think we met afterward. I remember receiving an email from Jack, and there was also another guy named Nate Zukoff, who they were working on a tune, and I believe it was Simple Step. And Simple Step was, I guess, a song. It was a song that they were doing as part of a class project. And and so we worked on the tune. He had these interesting lyrics, and I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, let's just try it out. Let's go. And so we went to the Duderstadt, which was like a music technology building, and it still is. It houses like the UM studio, and recorded the song.
Said I believe in the power of Cuban hip motion. Sleeping upstairs, there's a party, yes, downstairs. Move these mics a little bit closer and let's go.
Yeah, and after that, the song was played. I guess and during the festival, it was like a film festival or something, and people started, wondering, whoa, who is that? And so word just kind of began to spread amongst a lot of not just music students, but just students in general. And then the song would be played at parties and stuff, and it was like, what? Meeting Jack in a way kind of became an avenue for exposure to that college scene. And he had also had a group called Groove Spoon that he had taken over. And I just remember one time us getting together at his house on campus, and I go down to the basement, and next thing you know, there's just like this rhythm section, there's this horn section, two other singers, and the rest was just kind of like history. We just kind of started working together and creating and posting.
I'm glad that you made mention of this sort of surrealism of Jack's lyric writing, because that's kind of where I wanted to get to when we start. So we start with spiritual music, right? And then we make a transition to secular music, and that's already like a little bit of, but still there can be meaningful music, and soul music is often filled with so much commentary or statements about the world or what, the human experience. You get to Jack now, and it's hard to know what's happening. And
it's very kind, right?
and I've always wondered for you, I'd like you to tell me the story of 1612, because my understanding is he put this in front of you and sort of had you figure out a way to deliver these lyrics. He kind of gave you these cryptic, unclear set of words.
You know what? I think of it as one giant experiment. Like, you take some scientists, you go into a lab, and you just mix potions, right? And you just kind of see what happens. Well, such is the case with Jack Stratton and Antwaun Stanley, right? So when I did, let's go back to Simple Step. Simple Step, it's like this kind of dancey but funky tune, and the lyrics are just kind of, whoa, who would put this combination together? Other than Jack, right? I wasn't able to really connect a ton of dots. My focus is many times on the melody and just the overall piece, right? But when it comes to the lyrics, it's not that there's no interest there, but I guess when I started working with Jack, there was this idea that was there, and he's always like, oh, if you want to change anything, oh, dude, go ahead. That's Jack, right? But I feel like Jack always has in his mind what he's a visionary, right? So, when I went to record it, I was just like, okay, let's just try it. Yeah. And then by the end, it just seemed to feel good. So it's really just a lot about feeling and how I could connect the melody to a certain feeling, right? And and then seeing and hearing other people connect with the with the songs, it's just like I might be left scratching my head, and someone else might be like, "Hey, that song changed the mood for my day or my week," and you're just like, "Wow, amazing." Yeah. So that kind of speaks to that feeling, even when singing like gospel music or singing a secular song, it has a lot to do with those emotions, those feelings. And that's why, you're able to, or for me, that's why I was able to have those influences that made me feel, a certain way, regardless if they were singing spiritual music or if they were singing, another type of music. It was the feeling. Yeah. And for me, with Jack and these lyrics, it was communicating these like quirky, I don't want to say completely nonsensical, because people obviously connect with those lyrics. Many do. I don't want to say everybody does, but many do. So I don't want to take anything away from that. But I think that was like the kind of the fun of it all too. It's just like, okay, you can give Antwaun something and it may not make complete sense, although to the writer it may, but you can give it to him and he can, interpret these lyrics in a certain way that can grab people,
make them feel meaningful. You can make nonsense feel meaningful.
And so, I don't know if there was ever like a real strategy behind it, but I just know that when it happened, we would try it and see what comes out. And more often than not, it would be something that, would latch on and was, and you look back and you're like, what? I don't know how that happened.
When we started this conversation with you saying, we've been waiting for the right time. I've been waiting for the right time to talk about something, to tell you the story. And And the reason I think we agreed that this is the right time is because you just put out this EP, which is the first that I can see proper statement that you've made where you're saying, this is now you and Tyler, this is who I want to be, this is the statement I want to make right now. Because I think one of the things that happens with Wolf is that everybody's in the context of Wolf. So, you're the almost playing the Antwaun Stanley character in Wolfpack, and
that's an interesting point, yeah.
And I actually realized that when I talked to Woody, because, he said, look, we all kind of play versions of ourselves on stage with Wolfpack. And it's not that it's not us, but it's a part of us. It's a version of us. It's not the whole story.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people have been wondering, so what's the statement that Antwaun is going to make when he stands up now and says, okay, boys and girls of the class, now please pay attention to me. Specifically, right. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's going to say to you that this is an incredible project. I mean, Ascension is amazing. The songs are incredible. You sound great. The production is impeccable. Tyler's concept is ridiculous, like the whole thing. And at the same time, I will say, unexpected.
Yeah. I think this project caught many off guard. And when I say many, meaning people, especially who've known me in the Wolf world, or who have known me as a gospel singer, It did catch a lot of people off guard. And that's the thing.
Now it's been some time since I felt right with you. Now we're on the line and our hearts are trying to get through. But we live on different pages, spelling out frustration. Try to understand but speak a different language. When the love we give is more than what we're taking in, we're lost in translation.
I feel like I've been on so many different scenes.
Yeah.
I've been able to do lots of, different musical projects, and many times have been like a front face of projects, right? Now with Wolfpack, it's a shared thing. Jack has done this incredible job of kind of orchestrating and building this engine that is, like I said in the beginning, just kind of supersedes really any one of us. And I think it's easy, I guess, to get caught up in, that you could potentially lose yourself and you're like, whoa, so wait, what was I doing before? To me, it just kind of speaks to like Jack's genius of being able to create this kind of thing. And we've had even internally many different, just kind of discussions among each other about, how things have progressed. And
I guess rather than focusing so much on the Wolf aspect of it, I guess what I'm saying is you seem to be somebody who, as you say, on a lot of scenes, people are able to pour their concept into or project their thing onto because you'll deliver it and give meaning to the thing. So whether it's Jack or it's Scary Pockets doing covers or it's this project with Tyler where it's like this really kind of high-end dance music, but with meaningful lyrics and thoughtful production, in the pop space. I could feel when I heard you do that record, like, yeah, this is a perfect record for you to do because you deliver it so beautifully. And as you say, I know it's also not the last statement you're going to make because it's such a specific thing.
I wasn't really sure how it would be received. I didn't really care so much about that other than just trying to exercise, pushing the limit, offering something that's different. I think it's quite possible that some people expected, this guy, I can't wait for his next gospel project, right? Or some people said, I can't wait for this next stripped down soul, just like, I don't know.
I'll tell you, if I'm being honest, that's what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be something that felt like somewhere between Theo's records and Joey's records, but for you,
Yeah. And I feel like many people did.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to have built a bit of a following, and in some way you feel a responsibility to meet certain expectations. But I also am really grateful to be in the space that I'm in right now, because I feel like I have had some room to experiment on my own.
Yeah.
To the point where it's not like me having to really feel a certain way because here I've built this massive following that I'm have to be subordinate to, right? You know? So it's really cool to be in the space that I am. And as I continue to mature as an artist, it may be possible that things come into more of a focus where it's like, okay, this is what is kind of expected. So let me make sure that what I do moving forward fits here, you know? And I mean, I think it could be helpful for many avid listeners, because it's like, okay, when I'm feeling this way or when I want this, I'm going to pull out an Antwaun Stanley record. But that's not really the case right now. And I love that for me right now, because I don't, especially after having been seen as a gospel artist for so long, it's like, okay, you can finally break out of the box and you can try a little bit of everything and feel a certain freedom. Now, there's also a cost to that sometimes. And so if you have so much freedom, you can also jeopardize your ability to capture one specific thing and ride whatever wave that may be, you know? So that can be, you know, there's a cost and benefit, I think, to many things, but I'm a person that really prefers the freedom to be able to express myself, you know, in a wide number of ways.
I love what you just said. There it is. That's the paradox. That's the question. You know, I'm not sure if it's even fair to ask this question of you or the world, but it's one that I've been asking this year and the last couple of years, which is like, do we have a job, not a job like a job that we get paid for, but if we're artists, if you're an artist, what is your job? You know, and one version of the job, as you described, is to hone in on an experience that you can provide to your audience and be there for them, you know? I mean, that's a beautifully articulated thing. When I'm feeling a certain way, I know I can always count on my Antwaun Stanley records to make me feel better or whatever, you know? And on the other hand, maybe your job has nothing to do with expectation. It has to do with you processing the world in your way and sharing that with the audience. Not based on their expectation, but based on your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nail it. Yeah, I think with this record, there were definitely multiple sides where people were, definitely expecting something, but got something else, right? And in some ways, they could have been overjoyed, and in some ways, they could have been slightly disappointed. But I think the beauty of it for me is that right now, my experience as an artist, I have to say, honestly, it's not really being lived through the listener right now. I mean, I'm thinking about the listener because the listener is important. And if you don't have any listeners, then, you know, that's you got a bit of a problem, right?
Yeah.
This is your job. But I'm also living this thing as a creator of the music, and I've been able to pair with people like Jack and even Corey and or Tyler or, you know, Scary Pockets. You know, I've been able to kind of pair with, you know, different people, and it's been amazing. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's me kind of orchestrating, okay, where you want to be, right? And it's been a joy connecting with so many listeners through those, you know, through those different outlets. Now it's kind of like I don't want to say now, but it's kind of been my turn to kind of project, okay, what is it that you want to put out into the world?
Yeah.
I'm not glued to any one particular thing musically right now. And so I have to say that I've in a way been kind of selfish. The project was really just about creating, you know, some, you know, cool tunes that is a little different from maybe what you have heard on the radio. Very different from, like I said, from a lot of things that I've done.
Yeah.
More recently, probably, people are probably always comparing the stuff that I've done with Wolfpack. But see, I have to appreciate them differently.
Yes.
You know? And And so, yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
I was so excited to be able to do it. But
Have you received any, like, have you seen online people like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting, or this is, I mean, are you,
no, I haven't really seen a lot of
Yeah.
people say that.
yeah,
You know, that's just my own personal like feeling that I'm certain, I'm almost certain that people were not expecting that, you know, and I just don't want to be, I don't want to be a naive. Because when I go back and I listen to a lot of stuff that I've done, this is definitely different from that,
Yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, I like to acknowledge, you know, what I believe is truth.
Is
and
true,
that to me
yeah.
is truthful. And so, you know, but that's the beauty of it. You know, we've covered that already, but it's the beauty of it for me is just being able to have that freedom to explore right now. And I'm so appreciative to, you know, for that. And, you know, we'll see if things will narrow itself down in the future to come. But you know, I'll let it come when it does.
It's one of the burdens of being able to do a lot of things. You know, I mean, I remember I talked to Theo about this too. It's hard when you can convincingly do a lot of styles to figure out what is the narrow lane.
Yeah, and I've had many discussions with Theo about that too. And man, what a great guy! He's just Theo's highly analytical.
Yeah.
And he, you know, and he's just a very, but he's also very knowledgeable, and he's been at his game, you know, for a while too. And he's played many roles, you know, with his career, you know. And for me, I feel like I am learning newer things about myself as an artist and a creative. And so it's cool to be able to reference or to be, you know, talk with someone like that who so but yeah, I'm it's cool to hear that there's that consistency, that there's just not that's not a new thing, but that it's something that's like a recurring discussion.
Oh man, that's one of the discussions to me is some people show up and they just know, you know, and for whatever reason they know, whether it's because they're really specific about what they do, or they're really specific about what they want to do, or they're, you know, these kind of unicorns like Jack who just have such a fully formed vision that they know what they're going towards. But I think a lot of people are living in that space where it could be this and it could be that, and you know, and the better you do, you know, that I'll tell you the other thing is, you know, the universe is tricky and not always doesn't play fair, because some of the most gifted people I know are the ones who struggled the most with this question.
Yeah. And sometimes some of the most gifted are not given a lot of eyes, you know, at all.
Yeah.
And like you said, that is, you know, this just kind of speaks to how the universe can, you know, can be choosy, you know? But I think at the end of the day, you work to discover what your gift is, and you try to exploit it in the best way, you know? And one of the great things about Jack that I feel like he's done with me in particular is he recognized a certain thing, and I think that he exploited it in the best way possible. And it's just like, no one would have imagined that things would have gone the way that they have. But I'm very appreciative that I've been able to, you know, surround myself in certain circles and to connect with so many, you know, others through, you know, the group and the association. And so, you know, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for that. But even with that, it's still like a constant process of discovery.
Yeah.
You know, and who you are.
Well, I can't wait to see what you discover, Antwaun. I thank you. Thanks, man. I'm such an admirer of your singing and of your energy and of your presence. And I know, like I said, how influential you've been to your immediate friends and to your fans also. So, Antwaun Stanley, thank you so much, man.
Oh, wow. Leo, man, I really, really have to thank you. I feel like this is one of the first times where I've really seriously kind of engaged and talked about a lot of the story, and there's still even more that we weren't able to cover. But like I said, it's a journey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
There he was, my friends, Antwaun Stanley. I'll be back again in your headspace before you know it. Until then, I want to leave you with this beautiful clip of Antwaun and Corey Wong playing Bridge Over Troubled Waters backstage somewhere so gorgeous and heartfelt. I'll talk to you soon.
Paramilitary for you. Feeling small when tears are in your eyes. I'll try them all. I'm on your side when times are rough. And friends, they just can't be found like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay